On Tech News Today, Comcast kills their merger with Time Warner Cable. And we take a good look at the Apple Watch teardown, and Apple fans are not going to like the most recent addition to Google Maps. It's all coming up next on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Friday, April 24th, 2015. This episode is brought to you by Littlebits, the easy way to build electronics with modular building blocks. Go to littlebits.com/TNT and you'll get $20 off your first kit, plus free shipping in the U.S. And by Gazelle, the fast and simple way to sell your used gadgets. Find out what your used iPhone, iPad, and other Apple products are worth at Gazelle.com. Tech News Today is the show where we talk about the tech news with the journalists who report it. Welcome to the show. My name is Mike Elgan, and our co-anchor today is Mashable Senior Tech Correspondent Christina Warren. How you doing, Christina?
I'm good. I'm without an Apple Watch, so I'm not as good as I could be.
Yeah, I know. Me too.
But I mean, you know.
I got this going on right here.
Yeah.
It's awful.
I definitely, it is awful. It is awful. I mean, other than that travesty.
Yeah. It is probably today the first worldest problem in the world. And so...
oh, it is. Yes. No, I mean, I feel like a jerk for even complaining that I don't have my $900 watch. Then I won't have it for another month and a half. But yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I keep just repeating that over and over again.
Yes, you keep telling yourself that little lie. Well, you know, this is a big day, of course, for shipping Apple products. I'm referring, of course, to the shipping of the Apple IIc in 1981. Now, this is an interesting anniversary for this particular product. You know, you look at the Apple Watch, and what does it have, like 512 megabytes of RAM, something like that, Christina, and I think 4 or 8 gigabytes of storage. But the original, the Apple IIc in 1981 had 128, not megabytes, but kilobytes of RAM. So what you're wearing on your wrist is massive, is a supercomputer compared to what passed for a personal computer back in 1981. Wow, very cool to remember that. Well, let's get to our top story. Ding dong, the deal is dead. Comcast this morning announced that they're ending their $45 billion bid for Time Warner Cable. They got stiff resistance from both the Justice Department and the Federal Communications Commission. The combined companies would have controlled 57% of the U.S. broadband market and just 30% of pay television service in an industry that's conspicuous for lack of competition in most markets. Attorney General Eric Holder called it a victory for the Justice Department. And FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler was more politic, and he said it was a victory for consumers. I think that's more like it, Tom Wheeler. Yeah. But yeah, this is, you know, Christina, I have to be honest, I was really pessimistic about this for most of the period in which we've been discussing this. I thought there's no way they're going to block this. They always talk, you know, tough, and then they approve these types of things. But and they didn't actually block it technically. I mean, they just put it in the committee. They put it into the hearing of death. They scheduled it for the hearing of death, and then they're going to wait for it to die. And Comcast essentially cried uncle and said, "Okay, we give up. It's over."
No, I mean, I think what's really interesting about this deal and the fact that it didn't go through is if we look at what's happened over the last year and how much things have changed in the cable industry. There was an interesting article on Bloomberg View today about the end of the cable era, and it was kind of talking about how, you know, a year ago, the FCC had just struck down net neutrality and the existing laws about net neutrality. Aereo was about to go before the Supreme Court. This deal was in the works, and you fast forward, you know, a year later, and yes, Aereo lost, but net neutrality is now back with a vengeance. Now that internet is now, you know, classified under Title II, and this deal has become dead, and it's just fascinating because, like you, Mike, I did not think, I was pretty pessimistic. I figured, you know, there will be some resistance, but they're going to ultimately let this happen. And they didn't. And I'm shocked. I will be interested to see what impact, if any, this has kind of on the ongoing AT&T DirecTV stuff. I tend to think that it won't make any difference. But I think that just because they're smaller players, but I think it kind of puts the industry on notice that we're not ready for that reconglomeration of these sorts of services that we had before.
And although we kind of averted this this consolidation we still have the general problem of a lack of competition. We still have Comcast out there, which is which is strikes me as an unethical company. We've seen all the dirty tricks that they play with consumer support and so on. We've seen lots of things from Comcast that are kind of give you the willies. And in fact, this is one of the reasons I think that the government was so much against them. They'd seen how they function in previous deals and previous negotiations, like with Hulu and others, and found that they didn't really adhere to the terms of previous agreements and so on. So this is a problematic company, in my opinion. If you have a different opinion, or if you have something to add to this out there, please send us an email to tnt@twit.tv and let us know what you think about all this. But Christina Warren, yeah, I think this is great news for now. But again, Comcast is still out there. There's still a shark in the water, and so we don't know what they're going to do now. They got a lot of money to spend, and they're going to spend it somehow.
They do, and they still own a major television network. I mean, that to me, I think was the deal that was. I mean, obviously having more conglomeration and owning Time Warner would have been really problematic, especially for an industry that already lacks competition at the local level anyway. But they still own NBC Universal, and that was something that the government let happen. And that to me still is a humongous conflict of interest that is only going to be getting worse, especially as we move to this kind of post-cable era of streaming, because Comcast has a very vested interest in keeping their content from NBC Universal exclusive to them or on services that directly benefit them, and that would be the cable industry versus some of these a la carte options.
And Dr. Mom in the chat room points out that even though there's a shark in the water, remember what happened to Jaws in the end. So a bit of a note of optimism from the chat room. Thank you, Dr. Mom, for that. So anyway, well, we got more news coming up for you in just a sec. But first, let's talk about Little Bits. Little Bits, they're modular building blocks, and this is a great company. Go to littlebits.com/TNT to check this out, and we're even going to give you a discount, which I'll tell you about in just a sec. But if you've got kids, we talk a lot about. Yesterday we had Selena Larson on, and she writes a lot about women in technology. The basic problem with women in technology is that by the time women enter into high school or university levels of technology and programming and engineering, they report that they tend to feel like the boys have already got a leg up on them. And the reason is that our culture assumes that technology is for boys. So all the technology-oriented toys and things are marketed at boys, and the movies propagandize the world since about around 1984 about how tech is for boys. Well, here's a great opportunity. You got a little girl who's got a birthday coming up, buy her Little Bits. This is a way for children of both genders to learn more about technology. This stuff is not for just boys, it's for girls as well. So this is one example of the kinds of ways that children can be introduced to technology and get a real understanding of it, not just, just use an iPhone or something like this. This is a way for them to build things. They have the base and deluxe kits for beginners. They have the Space Kit, which is developed in partnership with NASA. The Arduino Coding Kit, which I highly recommend because it involves programming whatever it is that you build. And that's really the complete engineering, experience to build something and then write software for it. Little Bits is now offering customers $20 off the first kit plus free shipping in the U.S. Just go to littlebits.com/TNT. That's littlebits.com/TNT. And, if you do make something with Little Bits, post it on Instagram and let us know about that so we can showcase it. We'd love to see that. So littlebits.com/TNT. Well, Google, Microsoft, and Amazon reported earnings yesterday. Who's up and who's down? And really the big question is, how much money exactly is Amazon making on its cloud service? Lily Hay Newman is a reporter for Slate and joins us now to talk about all this. Welcome to you, Lily.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. Now, let's start with Google. They missed expectations, but they sounded really upbeat in the call. Can you tell us about what they reported?
Yeah. Revenue was $17.26 billion, and the industry prediction had been more like 17.5, so there was a miss there. And then earnings per share were $6.57 compared with a forecast of 6.63. So again, a little bit of a miss there. But ad revenue was up, and they were sounding pretty breezy on the call. They addressed ad clicks, sort of dispelling some rumors about how YouTube ads play into that, how mobile plays into that, and whether they've been struggling in mobile, which of course they say they don't, even though maybe there's some evidence that they are a little bit. And yeah, so they sounded pretty chill. And after hours, the stock was trading up. So investors agreed.
Good stuff. Chill indeed. So what did they say about Project Phi?
They did talk about Project Phi, and again, sounded like it was just a really exciting and novel thing that they were just kind of throwing against the wall to see what sticks in classic Google fashion. They said that unlike some of their other projects like Loon and Google Fiber, it seems that Project Phi isn't costing very much out of pocket. It's all working on existing infrastructure. They're partnering with carriers like Sprint and T-Mobile to get it going. So they seem to feel like it's all about just exploring and seeing what's going on in this space. And they said they're curious to see how the market reacts. So definitely not a huge burden for them.
Yeah, it's mostly deals and software instead of digging trenches and launching things into space and so on. Lily, let's talk about Microsoft. Everybody wants to know how CEO Satya Nadella is going to change the company. What did Microsoft report yesterday, and what were the reactions from investors?
Right. Microsoft did well yesterday. Nadella had warned that they might have a slow quarter, but revenue is $21.7 billion, and the analyst prediction was about $21 billion, so they were up there. And their earnings per share was 61 cents versus the prediction of 51 cents. So they were really, solid versus some of the warnings they had put out there just in case.
So how were sales affected by the inclusion of Nokia's mobile phone business, which, obviously Microsoft didn't have during the year-ago quarter?
Right. Yeah, sales were strong. Like I said, $21.7 billion in revenue, which was 6.5% from last year. And Nokia was definitely a huge contributor to that because, all the companies were sort of dealing with headwind from the strong dollar on sales. So to have Nokia contributing this year, I think really helped.
We're going to talk about Amazon's AWS in just a sec, but by comparison, how did Microsoft do with its Azure cloud service?
Yeah, so they also were giving some new numbers about Azure, but that is lumped into what they call commercial cloud, which also includes things like Office 365. So when they talk numbers in that section, you're not just getting a pure reading on how Azure's doing. So what Nadella said last quarter was that they had 5.5 billion, a run rate of 5.5 billion on commercial cloud, which is sort of forecasting over 4 quarters. So, and this quarter they talked about a run rate of 6.3 billion in that sector. So it sounds like it's growing, but it's hard to extrapolate exactly what that means for an individual quarter. Maybe 6.3 billion divided by 4 is 1.6 billion, but we don't know if that's exactly accurate.
Okay, so Amazon, of course, freaked investors out with disappointing revenue numbers. So how did they do? But I guess in addition to that, the big question is how, for the first time ever, they're talking about Amazon Web Services revenue, and everybody, they're clearly the leader in these cloud services, and everybody wants to know how they did. So how did Amazon do in general, and how did they do with AWS?
Yeah, so in general, they did sort of what they always do, which is to spend pretty much everything they make in the quarter. Revenue was up 15% to $22.72 billion, which was a little bit above the expectation. So that was cool. But they pretty much spent everything. So, it's the same concern that investors always have about whether they could be tightening up spending, as a way of sort of having some more cushion rather than just going all the way to that zero. And web services, which is, thought to be the #1 cloud platform, was doing pretty well in the new numbers and really on par with Azure, sounding like maybe it's a little bit past it. Amazon reported that revenue was up 49% to $1.57 billion this quarter. So it could be, maybe about a $6 billion business. But on the call, Jeff Bezos called it a $5 billion business. So it's, right on target to be one of the top cloud platforms, just like the predictions kind of said.
I interpreted that to mean $5 billion for this year as a prediction. That's what my prediction, interpretation of that was.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, so Lily Newman is at slate.com, and you can catch up with her on Twitter at Lily H. Newman. Thanks for joining us today, Lily.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Well, the gadget repair tool and parts company iFixit did another one of their famous teardowns. This time they flew to Australia, where it's always the future, to tear apart a brand new Apple Watch. Joining us to talk about the teardown is iFixit teardown engineer Geoff Wacker. Welcome to you, Geoff.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. Now, after taking the Apple Watch apart, what are your overall impressions about the hardware engineering involved in this device?
It's definitely impressive engineering. The case in itself is quite a marvel, just all the engineering that went behind it. But really what we were disappointed with was the S1. There had been rumors of upgradability of it and whatnot, but to remove it from the case, we actually had to tear off a few soldered connectors, and which obviously doesn't bode well for upgradability. When it comes to repairability, though, the screen was difficult to take off, but we were able to get it off with some heating and prying, much like the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus and whatnot. But overall, we gave it a 5 out of 10, which we definitely would have liked to see better from Apple. But yeah, I mean, that's the Apple Watch.
So, I mean, that's really interesting. As you said, there had been a lot of rumors that this was going to be kind of a more modular design, but obviously this is not looking like this is going to be something that's easy to repair. When it came to actually kind of the build quality of the watch itself, what were kind of your impressions of that?
The build quality was fantastic. I mean, you're really paying for a luxury fashion piece here, and it's definitely evidenced in everything that went into it. The digital crown is pretty well built, along with the rest of the frame. The S1 itself, although it's pretty to look at, if you take a look at our teardown, you'll see that it's actually encased in, as Apple has said, in some resin, meaning that we weren't able to really get and identify any of the chips on it. So we're going to need to talk to our friends at Chipworks to see if they can make some work of that. But overall, everything that went into it was quite an engineering marvel from our standpoint.
Including, and you know, there's all kinds of super high-tech stuff in there, like the Taptics engine, which is spring-loaded. You found that it goes back and forth in a straight line, and it's attached directly to the speaker, which I think is interesting. You also found a mystery door behind the band enclosure that has 6 copper connectors, and you're assuming or predicting that that's going to turn out to be a diagnostic port. But, you know, the high-tech nature of this even went down to the screws. And I've seen iFixit tools. You guys have some super, super tiny, tiny tools, but you actually had to file one down in order to use this, in order to unscrew some of these tiniest screws ever that you've ever seen. And also, they were using rare tri-wing screws. I know this is going to sound ridiculous, but can you talk a little bit about these screws?
Yeah, totally. I mean, we at iFixit, you know, we have all the tools that we need for teardowns like this. But when it came to these pesky little tri-wings, they were tinier than anything we've ever seen. So we actually had to take a file tool and file down one of the smallest tri-wing screwdriver that we have to be able to get it to fit in there. And it wasn't only that they were small, but they were also at if you can check out the pictures, some of the angles on them were hard to get at. Yeah, that picture right there, actually. And that proved difficult to get out, but once we were able to file down our tool, we were able to get them out.
So I have a weird question for you. We were playing around with our Apple Watch today, and we were looking at the fact that you could actually charge the Moto 360 with the Apple Watch charger, which kind of seems to imply that there's some sort of Qi charging capability inside the Apple Watch. When you were taking it apart, were you able to tell anything about its charging mechanism and what sort of technology it's using for its inductive charging?
No, we didn't actually get a chance to fully take apart the charger as to see if it has that Qi technology that that you noticed with the Moto 360. It would definitely be interesting to see if it is to take it apart further and see if it definitely is Qi technology or a derivative of it. But time will tell for that.
You also found, or it emerged from all this, that the Apple Watch has a blood oxygen monitor, which is not a feature of the watch that is not currently able to be used. Do you have any thoughts about what's going on with this? Are they waiting for approvals on this thing? Why is this sensor there but not being used?
Yeah, our bets are, from the research that we did initially and what we've seen now, is that this just comes down probably to FDA regulations. As you can imagine, for a sensor like this, the FDA is going to regulate it and make sure that it follows all the regulations and whatnot. But we're betting that Apple is still sitting on this and waiting for a potential upgrade or something like that.
Awesome. Well, it's a great teardown. I really enjoyed it, and you guys always do great work there with those. Those pictures are fantastic.
Thank you.
Geoff Wacker's at ifixit.com, and you can follow him. Well, you can't follow him. Go to iFixit and find him there, and the other engineers who do these teardowns. Thanks again, Geoff.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Well, before we move on to more news, there's also been some reports that the Apple Watch is more waterproof than they advertise. They basically say it's kind of splash proof or whatever, but some very moist people in Australia checked it out and really tested it for waterproofing. And here's, let's take a look at a bit of their video.
So we took it the next step and we decided to go for a swim in a pool. Okay, so as you can see from our footage, it's not very responsive when it goes underwater. Now, this is because it is a capacitive touchscreen, so this isn't to be unexpected. However, as soon as the Apple Watch comes out of the water, it's still fully functional and fully responsive.
This is PhoneFox, which is the people doing this.
Okay, now after 5 minutes of holding the Apple Watch underwater, we still couldn't get it to stop working, so Christian decided to take it for a swim. Even after taking it for a swim, it still was working absolutely fine. It was fully responsive. So we decided to put the Apple Watch underwater and just leave it there for another 5 minutes. So in total, we had it underwater for about 15 minutes and we just absolutely couldn't get it to stop working. It's actually a lot more waterproof than we had originally anticipated. Now, Apple don't claim that their watch is waterproof. However, we had ours under hot water for about 5 minutes. Then we had it in a bucket of cold water for another 5 minutes. And then we took it for a swim for 15 minutes in a pool that was about 1.2 meters deep. We've had it out of the water now for about an hour and it is still fully functional. Apple definitely wouldn't recommend you try what we just did, but you know, if you get your Apple Watch wet, I'd say it's pretty safe to say it's not going to be damaged. I mean, we had it submerged underwater for 15 minutes and it came out unscathed. Now, unfortunately, we couldn't take this test further as we didn't have a deeper pool. However, we do have some more tests coming up. We're going to be smashing the Apple Watch with a hammer. Definitely.
I think we were speaking to these kinds of guys before the show. All right, I think we got the idea.
I was. Yeah, no, I mean, I will have to say, I think smashing with a hammer is a little much, but I do appreciate that they did the water testing. And it's interesting, too, that they're talking about this because, as they said, you know, Apple is saying it's splash proof. But Tim Cook had gone on record before saying that he showers with his. So I think I've always kind of had the impression that it's a little bit more waterproof than they want to claim. They just maybe don't have the tolerances to the point where they feel like they can say, yeah, go swimming with this, go showering with this, you know, but it might actually be fine. So that's good to know.
And one of the attributes that they discovered in the teardown, the iFixit's teardown, and we didn't go into all of the details, but there are lots of O-rings and waterproofing inside the watch that facilitate this. And I think it's really interesting. This week we had a story from Jawbone's most recent device, which was originally designed for swimmers. It was going to be this big swimmer's watch, and when they finally came out with it, they're like, well, it's not really that waterproof. And so here Apple is with something that's truly waterproof. But again, you know, this is a mass market thing. They've already sold probably 3 million of these things. By the end of the year, they're going to sell 20 million or something like that. And if they're out there bragging that it's waterproof, people are going to be scuba diving and all kinds of stuff, and they're going to have, you know, tech support headaches. So they're under-promising and over-delivering, and that's a great news. You know, it would be terrible if they, you know, put this thing underwater and it just died immediately, because one of these days I'm going to accidentally drop mine in water or something. I just know it. Well, in product update news, the CEO of the Italian eyewear maker Luxottica, whose name is Massimo Vian, said today that his company is building a new version of Google Glass, but didn't say when it might ship. He also pointed out that Luxottica's products will represent version 2 of the device. The only one we've ever seen to date is what he's calling version 1. And he also suggested that Google's already working on a version 3, which he suggested might be a whole new interpretation of the concept. That's an intriguing comment, but super vague. And I'm really excited about this. You know, the echo chamber trope that Google Glass is dead was completely false, and it looks like Luxottica is actually going to productize this, hopefully sooner rather than later. What do you think, Christina Warren? I know you're kind of an anti-glass hole person.
I'm not an anti-glass person. I'm anti the way that Google has implemented it thus far. I think that if they can make something that's actually attractive, that's great. I still think that the echo chamber about glass being dead, I'm not sure if I would say that's totally false. I think that glass in its iteration of the way it was sold its first generation is dead. If there's a future product that they call glass, I think it's going to obviously look very different, and I wouldn't be surprised if it has very different interface components to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, we saw a patent from Google for a Google Glass device where the electronics, the business end of the Google Glass, the prism, the camera, all the electronics, the battery, was a magnetic snap-on that snapped onto glasses. So the glass would have to be specially built for glass, but then you could just remove it and you'd be wearing your prescription glasses or your sunglasses, and you could put it on, take it off, and that would be really cool. I also would like to see them come out with a version with a removable camera, because I think it's really the camera that freaks a lot of people out, and has to be significantly less dorky. You can't have this thing attached to your face and expect to be accepted by society. And so, hopefully they'll work on all those things. And we'll see. Luxottica is a company that prides itself on fashion, the fashion aspect of this watch. We'll see if they can pull it off and do something a little bit more elegant than version 1, as we've seen. Well, in big number news, 972,814. That's how many dollars venture capital firm Kleiner Perkins, Caulfield & Byers wants from Ellen Pao to pay their legal fees after emerging triumphant in a sex discrimination lawsuit that she brought against the firm. The company said they would waive the fees, however, if she agrees not to appeal. Pao, who is currently the interim CEO of Reddit, is, quote, considering the proposal, unquote. My prediction and also my advice is to not accept the money, to go to appeal, because let's really see where this thing goes. And, she's got a lot of supporters out there, so maybe there'll be some sort of fundraising effort to help her pay for, the Kleiner Perkins legal fees, and also pay for the legal fees that are going to be required for the appeal. What do you think, Christina Warren?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that this is one of the situations where she has the money to pay for this herself, her supporters, other things. She has the money to pay for this. So, I mean, I think that if that would be the only reason that she would forego appealing would be because of legal fees, that would be silly. I think whether or not she wants to appeal, I mean, that's obviously up to her. But I would hope that the fact that, she doesn't want to pay the legal fees is the least of it, because, I mean, I think that the settlement she got from Kleiner when they let her go was, a considerable amount of money. She makes a lot of money as the interim CEO of Reddit. As you said, she could, without a doubt, have a fundraiser, a PAC, some sort of thing, help her out. But I mean, obviously I think it's up to her and her lawyers whether or not she wants to appeal. But I don't think that the amount of money that she has to pay in legal fees should be in any way the determining factor.
That's a good point. I think she would disappoint a lot of people if she just took the money, because a lot of people are rooting for her to actually, make a point about this. There's the larger issue of all the other women in technology who may have gone through what she has apparently gone through. Well, we're going to get to some more news and something you're really just not going to believe in just a second. But first, let's talk about Gazelle. I've actually used Gazelle. I haven't used it to pay other people's legal fees. I always use it to buy my next device, and they always pay more than I think they're going to pay. The way you use Gazelle, just go to GAZELLE.com. This is fun even if you don't have a gadget to sell, because it's just exploring what used devices are like. You go in there and you choose whether it's going to be an iPhone or an Android phone, or even an Apple laptop, or maybe an iPod even. Choose the device, if you have the Galaxy whatever or the iPhone 5 whatever, and you choose it, say it's either broken or in good condition or it's flawless, and then boom, up comes a price, $440 unlocked for the iPhone 6 with 64 gigs in perfect condition. That's good money, and that'll go a long way toward buying you your new Apple Watch. So, and then they send you an empty box with a sticker on it, okay? So you take the sticker, you put the device in the box, and the sticker is pre-addressed, pre-everything, and you just put it in the mailbox. Super, super easy, and you get paid fast. And of course, you can buy from Gazelle as well. You can buy a certified like new device, which is, indistinguishable from a brand new device, and it's significantly less expensive than actually buying a new device. Gazelle is the best place to buy or sell a pre-owned device. Find out what your iPhone's worth. Take a minute and go to Gazelle.com to find out. Well, in news you can lose, Google's Android mascot, the Android robot, was discovered in Google's map of Pakistan urinating on the Apple logo. And here's how they did it. They submitted different shapes at different times, each time claiming each shape is a park. And over time, the completed drawing emerged from the so-called parks. So nobody really noticed that it was the shape that it really is. Google itself is really, really sorry and has already removed the image this morning, but it raises even more questions about Google's quality control when it comes to Maps. I mean, last week, somebody was able to, excuse me, add a Google Maps listing for Edward's Snow Den to the White House. And we talked about it in the latest episode of This Week in Google if you want to check out the details on that. But, you know, there's something to be said for open maps, Christina Warren, but I think Google Maps might be just a little too open.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. But it's interesting because how do you balance these things out, right? Because over the years, Google Maps has actually become a lot more closed than it was when it started, you know. But one of the reasons why Google Maps is so good and so accurate is because in the early days, you know, it was very similar to what now the OpenStreetMap project is like, in which, you know, individuals were kind of the ones who were doing a lot of the work for actually submitting locations and letting Google know where these things were when they couldn't get actual, you know, cameras and cartographers out there, so to speak, to map the world. And Google still relies on a lot of third-party users in other parts of the world, you know, Pakistan being kind of one of those examples. And so you kind of got to balance, you know, letting people submit their own stuff versus the havoc people can play. But it's always fun when these stories happen. You know, I mean, obviously Google was able to take care of both situations. But to me, I have to be a little bit impressed that someone was able to go through the effort of actually mapping out, you know, this Android logo, and peeing on the Apple logo, using the parks information. Just the amount of time that must have taken to plan and plot that out I mean, look, as far as pranks go, it's pretty funny.
It's funny, and I have to admit, I apologize, but I have to admit that my favorite part of this, if we can show the image again, but basically, the thing that I like best about this is that you can see that the Android logo appears to be actually experiencing some relief.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like he's actually kind of got a facial expression.
He's like, ha.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like, ah, I feel better.
Yeah.
No, it's very funny. And you know, somewhere, you know, it's the famous Bill Watterson photo of Calvin, you know, Calvin peeing on something that he hates. He hates that image because someone, you know, drew Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes peeing on something, and it's not authorized by Bill Watterson. But it's funny to see that unauthorized image kind of become a meme and wind up on Google Maps. Incredible. And but you're right, maybe they do need to do a little bit better job with quality control. But I mean, these things, we've had 2 high-profile incidents in the last week, but by and large, you know, I think they do a fairly good job.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they do. It's true. Well, our TNT fan of the day is Alex Lear, who posted this picture on Google Plus and said he loves listening to Tech News Today while cross-country skiing. And what we're looking at there is a wrist with a, what is that, Jason? That's not a Moto 360, is it? It is the Moto 360 with the Tech News Today controller on it. With and ahead of him is this open snowy road. That is very, very cool. If you're going to cross-country ski, make sure you bring us with you. We love to go along as long as we don't actually have to do the work of cross-country skiing. How do you watch or listen to TNT? Just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup and post it on Google+, Twitter, or Facebook. Use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT so we can find it. Christina Warren, what are you doing these days besides lamenting the fact that you weren't up at midnight to order your Apple Watch so you would have it today?
Well, even if I had been awake at midnight, I'm not really sure if I would have gotten mine today because of the band I want. But other than having a huge case of fear of missing out over the Apple Watch, I'm writing some Apple Watch stuff, some kind of primers so people can get all Mashable's Apple Watch coverage in one place today. And we are actually in about 10 minutes going to do a Mash talk, probably about the watch on Periscope and Meerkat. So if anybody wants to kind of see kind of our take on some of those things, you can join us in about 10 minutes. And other than that, I was in Vegas for most of the week at CinemaCon, so I'm sort of recovering from way too much popcorn and candy and movies.
Oh, wow. Well, you can catch up with Christina Warren at film_girl, #FOMO, and also here probably next week on Friday. Thank you so much for co-anchoring, Christina. We'll see you next time.
See you next time. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Bye-bye. You can subscribe to Tech News Today at twit.tv/TNT. And if you'd like to help us grow our audience, here's how you can do it. Just post a link to twit.tv/TNT on the social media site of your choice. Tag 3 friends who you think might enjoy the show and recommend that they subscribe. You can also watch us live every weekday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 1800 UTC at live.twit.tv or on the app or browser plugin of your choice, which you can find at twit.tv/apps. If you're ever in town, come on in and watch us in the Brick House as part of our studio audience. You just send email to tickets@twit.tv, and you can follow us on Twitter at Tech News Today TV. You can follow me personally on Instagram at Mike Elgan with one E in the middle, MikeElgan. Let us know what you think. Send an email to tnt@twit.tv or call 260-TNT-SHOW. Don't miss Tech News Tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific every single weeknight, and that is the Tech News Today. This show is produced by Jason Cleanthes and edited by Brian Burnett. My name is Mike Elgan. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you Monday.